You said you'd come. Now let's hope you're not too late.
We know each other. He's a friend from work.
Long talks. Talk just a little bit, just for the sake of it. Say what you think of it. Long talks. Talk just a little bit, just for the sake of it. Say what you think of it. Long talks. Talk just a little bit, just for the sake of it. Say what you think of it.
Welcome to Jumanji.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to a very special bonus edition of the Wulong Talks podcast. As you know, if you've been following us for a little while, we like to do some interviews when we get the opportunity to do them. And today we've got a terrific interview lined up for you and a very, very special guest as well. He will introduce himself shortly. But first of all, let me say Happy New Year to everybody, because I don't think I've got the chance to actually do that yet. So Happy New Year, everyone who's listening. And of course, I'm joined by the Rustling Kid, the star of the show, Rich Kid. Rich, how you doing, man?
I'm not too bad. As my boy would say, Happy New Year, you filthy animals. Yeah, I'm good. Good to be here. 2018. Let's see how this goes.
That's the motto for the year, man. Let's see how this goes. Do you know what phrase I heard today, actually, randomly? I was watching old reruns of, I don't know if either of you two watched this, but Mock the Week. I was watching reruns of that, and they had a saying on there, which was nuts on the road. And I love it. So that's like, that's our motto for 2018, nuts on the road. And it's like, what does nuts on the road mean? Anything you want it to mean. just nuts on the road, isn't it? But anyway, let me introduce our guest. We have a very special guest here that we'll be interviewing. His name is Jed Shepherd. He is a screenwriter. He is a independent filmmaker. He is a podcast superstar. He is a very good friend of ours as well, somebody that we've known for a very, very long time. And it's a real privilege and a real pleasure to be able to sit down and catch up with him. So, Jed, welcome.
Hello, guys. Nice to be here at last.
Yeah, finally. It's only taken, 6 months to get to this point?
It's about a year in the making, isn't it?
Yeah.
Under a lot of pressure right now.
I was just going to say that. We need to deliver big time on this one, people. We really do.
Thank you for the intro. Making me sound good.
I think that intro, you should have just said Playboy Billionaire Philanthropist.
Yeah, I was going to say, you have missed out a few things. The key ones, but that's fine.
Yeah, pretty much, man. Well, yeah, I said it's great to finally have you, dude. You know, with as I said in the introduction, listeners, you know, Jed's got his finger in many different pies, and
yeah. Please don't tell my girlfriend.
We'll keep that between us. But you know, he's got a lot of experience of different things. So hopefully, here with the conversation we'll have with Jed, you'll get an idea of kind of how he's gone about, you know, creating the art that he does and the script writing work that he's done. And also maybe it will give you a few ideas as to how you can get into sort of script writing and podcasting and things like that as well. Yeah. But yeah, Jed, obviously we'll start with the most obvious question, I guess, which is how did you get started into sort of screenwriting and stuff?
Well, like, first of all, we went to school together. We went to college together, to St. Francis Xavier, otherwise known as SFX, which sounds a lot cooler than it is. And back in SFX days, I was like writing little stories here that none of you guys ever seen, because I would just kind of hide it because it's like stupid. But I mean, even back then, like, we were all like massive film fans. We considered ourselves like up on like kind of geek culture before geek culture even existed. When it was a time when if you like comics, you were kind of like an outcast. When you'd kind of like, people would ask you where you're going, and you wouldn't tell them you're going to the comic shop. You'd tell them you're going to go kick some cans somewhere or something. play PlayStation.
Going to go rob a pensioner.
Yeah. I'm going to light a fire.
Well, we'd be getting on a Wednesday or whatever, getting comics and stuff, and like trading cards and things. So I mean, ever since I was little, I'd be like into like films, and I was always like, how do you get into films? Maybe you have to be in Hollywood. So I always kind of wanted to do it myself. And yeah, the little stories I wrote were just always kind of like, what if I wrote an episode of Star Trek? What would I do? And it'd all just be like chaos. Basically, it'd be like a lot more like dark and kind of gory than a Star Trek episode ever was. And yeah, I think just over the years I've just been writing my own little stories. Every now and again having a little bit success here and there. But it's kind of only really recently, it's been quite a long process where the stuff I'm writing is actually kind of like caught on. So it's not like people kind of like think it's a little bit of an overnight kind of success type thing. It's just the opposite. It's taken so long for people to take me seriously in the kind of things I do. And I think it kind of all started, my involvement with kind of film. Do you know the Birdemic franchise? Have you heard of the Birdemic?
No.
Okay.
I know Biodemic. I
Yeah.
think I've heard that name before, but
Yeah.
I don't know the...
Okay, I'm about to educate you in...
Please, I'm stupid.
Yeah.
I'm just a pretty face, but I'm stupid.
Well, I mean, not a lot of people know this one, but it's considered, like The Room, one of the worst movies ever made, but in kind of a good way. So I watched this crazy movie about these killer birds taking over San Francisco, or an area of San Francisco, and I was like, this person who made this is, one, mental, but two, I want to be involved in this guy's imagination somehow. So, like, this kind of film became a cult hit. It got to the front page of the New York Times. It was shown across the world as a cult film, like one of those midnight films. And I was like, I want in on this. So I do what I normally do. I email everyone involved and like, how can I get in on this? How can I get on this? And the kind of best way I thought was, right, I'm going to pitch them a sequel. So I was like, okay, this is my idea for a sequel. And I found one of the main actors, Alan Barr, his name is, and he's considered one of the worst actors of all time, by the way. So I emailed him. Hopefully he's not listening to this.
Yeah.
I emailed him and I was like, okay, this is my idea for a sequel. We need to get this made. And like, he doesn't know me from and I didn't have anything to kind of show him as a reason why he would listen to me. But he was, okay, you got to speak to the director. It's nothing to do with me. Kind of go away. So I found the director's email address, emailed him, okay, this is what I think should happen. This is what I can bring to it. And all I can bring to it is nothing, basically. Just kind of my help, or kind of a few ideas. And then just weirdly, it's kind of, it was in his mind to do a sequel anyway. So a sequel was put together with me as producer on it to one of the worst films ever made. So it was called Birdemic 2. And where the first one was just about killer birds, which was kind of like a rip-off of Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds, my thing that I lent to it is a little bit more imagination. So it had zombies in it. It had time travel in it. It's an absolute disaster, like beyond a joke, absolute disaster. But if you have a few drinks and watch it with friends, it's a real good watch. So that was my first experience of the kind of, because that had its premiere at the Hollywood, like the Man's Chinese Theatre, like.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was big all around the world. We had premieres in London, Europe. I managed to get it into a bunch of cinemas, just sweet talk them basically. So it was a minor success, and I was like, I kind of like this. And while we're waiting for Birdemic 3 to be made, which I hope never does get made, even though it's in my contract that I write it, by the way. I was like, right, I need to do something properly, and I kind of like hooked up with this director, and it was kind of like kismet, really, because it must be quite hard for people out there to kind of get their kind of footing in films. But for me, it's really easy. I just saw someone online who he posted a real short film. I think it was only 1 minute long. And I was like, this is kind of cool. I want to hang out with this guy. I emailed him, and he was a bit younger than me as well, so it's kind of weird. And I was like, you don't know me. I really like your film. I think we should go for a drink. We can talk horror movies, because I think I read somewhere that he liked horror movies. Talk horror movies, music. And he was like, cool, because he lived in London. Met up with a drink with him. It turns out that he was into all the same things as I was, had all the same references, knew all the same horror films. So we were like, okay, at some point we need to make a horror film together, because he's a director. He was kind of getting his name out there, and I was kind of doing the same thing. So we had this idea to make an Exorcist movie, and that was the first thing we thought of, about a guy who. This is a spoiler for the first thing we did. We did this film called Absence, which stars Paul McGann, who was
Great. Okay.
Yeah. He was the 8th Doctor Who, and
He's like the 8th brother as well of the McGann.
yeah, he probably is. Yeah,
Yeah,
He's like the white versions of like the Wayne's family.
he really is. And like, so my thing was like we had like a kind of a wish list of what we wanted to do with it. Had this idea to kind of surprise people and make people think it's not a horror film, but it turns out he's an exorcist, and all kind of like shit hits the fan. And I was like, I want a Doctor Who to play it, and he was like, okay, cool. And then somehow we managed to we hooked up with this producer called Dougie, who I basically tell him what I want, and he somehow makes that dream happen. I don't know how he does it. So I was like, okay, just get me a Doctor Who. So he comes back to Paul McGann, who does it, I think, for free as well.
Okay.
Like literally no money went into this film, and we made it, and it turned out amazing. And we got into, with that particular film, we got into London Film Festival, Fright Fest, and a bunch of other festivals. And I was like, oh, so it's like this easy. This is how you get known and go around film festivals, just by making a little film. And this was a real short film. It was only like a few minutes long. And I was like, okay, I like this, but I've got another idea that's more ambitious. And it's called Dawn of the Deaf. And I was like to Rob, don't laugh, because it sounds like it's a parody of Dawn of the Dead. But here's my pitch. It's about a group of people who, it's kind of a post-apocalyptic scenario where a sound kills everybody on Earth, and the only one who survives are the deaf people. And he was like, shit, we need to make this. But obviously this sounds expensive. So like we tried to kind of like get funding, and everyone we went to, and by this time Rob was like, he was doing adverts and stuff, so he was quite a well-known director. He did like a Barclays advert and things. So he had a bit of clout, but no one would make a horror film with subtitles and sign language, because it's ridiculous.
That's going to be a hard sell.
Yeah, and we originally wanted to make it into a feature film, and people were like, no, we don't like this idea. So we said, okay, we'll do it as a short first. So we just scrambled some money together, favours from everybody. Everyone who involved did it on favours. We convinced a particular acting school to give us some money if we used some of their actors, and we had to like teach them sign language and stuff. And we did this short film called Dawn of the Deaf. Now I knew it'd be like massive, but Rob did as well, but nobody else kind of felt it would be. And until like in hindsight now, they're like, oh yeah, of course it was going to be like massive. So we submitted it to a bunch of festivals, and all of a sudden we get a response from like Sundance, and yep, you're in Sundance, you're in London Film Festival, you're in all the big festivals around the world. And we're like, wow, okay, this is bizarre. So I spent the last year going to like it got into about 130 film festivals, and I went to a whole bunch of them all around the world. I got to introduce the film at like a London Film Festival, went to Sundance, and we showed it 3 times at Sundance. And if you get a film in Sundance, you made it, because people will come to, from that point on, people just come to us now and just throw money at us to make films, which is great. So we made it thinking with the premise that we would leave it at a point, it would kind of end with people wanting more. And because of the success, we won like a ton of awards. We won best film at like tons of film festivals. We're now making the feature film of it. I can't really say who's involved with it, but some big people are involved with it. Some big names who've made massive films very recently. They're on board as producers, so it's going to be basically a big Hollywood film. And me and Rob are basically just sellouts, and just we're just like, originally it was like, it has to be filmed in London, we have to be independent, blah, blah, blah. No, we're just selling out now. So
excuse me, how much?
Yeah,
take me.
So we're filming the feature film in America in 2018 this year. And it's going to be the first feature film that we've made, but we also have a TV show in the works as well, which we've kind of shopped around to a couple of places, and we think it's going to be kind of start making it in the next few months. And that's a horror anthology show, little bit like maybe like kind of like Black Mirror, but like for horror. And we just constantly have loads of projects on the go. We're being courted by quite a lot of like kind of big names in the horror industry. And who want to kind of do stuff with us, which is really good. So we're kind of in the position, like we had a meeting a couple of weeks ago where someone just offered us a lot of money to make something for them. They were like, we don't care what it is, just give us an idea and we'll make it. And we're like, okay. And to me, that sounded really good. But afterwards, Rob was like, no, we can do better. I was like, we can do better than someone giving us loads of money to make a film.
Yeah.
But no, because I think after Dawn of the Deaf, it's going to kind of be crazy.
Right.
Based on who's involved with it.
Yeah.
Who I've just turned myself up. That wasn't on purpose, guys, I promise.
That's cool. No worries.
So that's the kind of scenario for that. And then we're also kind of like working on a ton of other kind of like things as well in the pipeline. It's just kind of keeping up the momentum. That's kind of what you got to do, because once you have one semi hit, you've got to kind of keep going, otherwise people forget about you. So it's a bit daunting. But I think one of the main things is if anyone kind of has any inkling whether they want to do this themselves, is to submit their films to film festivals, because you'll get random people seeing it, and they post reviews, and they kind of tell their friends, and if you have something that's even half worth watching, like it'll find its audience, even if it is a subtitled film about deaf people fighting zombies. But yeah, I've had a good time just going around the world. Like I went to Slovakia like a few months back to Slovakian Film Festival, and never in my life would I thought I would go to some random village in Slovakia. And at first I thought this was going to be like a situation like Hostel or something.
Yeah.
I'd turn up and it'd be like I'd have to like I don't know, escape some kind of maze or something. But, like it was really good. Like every festival I've been to, they've kind of looked after you. I mean, Sundance was ridiculous because you're in the mountains, surrounded by like film stuff. You walk down the road and there's like Kristen Stewart like walking past you.
Yeah,
there's Robert Redford like having a coffee next to you, and it's like you're living in a cartoon or something. But yeah, and then it almost consumes you as well because you think, okay, this is what life is like right now. And then you go back to London and it's just like they're trying to swap up your Oyster card and it's not working. And it's like, oh,
back
man.
to earth with a bump.
Yeah,
It's raining and it's grey.
yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, so basically that's kind of how I got into it. I just fell in with the right people, and I'm just consumed by like horror. I love horror. That's my thing. Like, find your niche and just embrace it. And like, it's funny because like people used to hate horror. People kind of considered you like a freak. Because I remember even when we were in school, like people would think, oh yeah, Jed, you're just into horror, like weirdo. But like now horror is like the mainstream. Like the biggest films in the world are like Get Out and then films like It. Obviously, It made crazy money. So like now people are scrambling around for horror like writers and directors. And because like me and Rob are like almost the only ones in the game who kind of know horror, you come to us if you want a decent like horror film. So yeah,
Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, it's the rise that you've had here is it's definitely not meteoric. It appears to have been meteoric to those who obviously don't know how much you've had to go through in order to get to where you are now. But it does show you kind of how quickly things can change if you've kind of stick with your principles and stick with the path and don't get put off by the knockbacks and how long it can take for things to string together. It shows you that definitely. So yeah, good on you, man. The next question I was actually going to ask you was something you kind of started to answer anyway. So I'll jump into that and then I'll let Richard ask you some questions as well.
I can expand.
But the question the question I wanted to ask was that as you started to say, the horror genre is really kind of exploding, and that's something that we've kind of talked about a little bit on the podcast as well. I mean, particularly it feels in the last 18 months, it's just kind of gone huge, massive. You're getting horror movies making so much money at the box office. You're getting horror becoming part of the cultural zeitgeist again, and people are talking about it and Pennywise and all of that. What do you think it is that is the kind of the greatest strength of horror movies? What do you think it is that makes horror appeal to people in such a way that some other genres just don't do? Because some genres don't really cross over from their core audience in the way that the horror can. Horror seems to be able to span generations and racial boundaries and ethnic boundaries. So
well, the thing that people need to kind of like understand is all of the biggest directors that are out right now all started in horror. You've got Steven Spielberg, first film horror film. You've got James Cameron, first film horror film. Literally anyone you can think of who's a big director, their first film was horror. Maybe there's a couple of people out there who didn't take that route, but a lot of them did. And the reason why they did that was because horror is the cheapest and elicits the biggest response for the input you put in there. You can make, that's why you have Blumhouse doing so well. You stick 2 or 3 million into a film, as long as it's got a good idea, it'll blow up. Like Get Out, Don't Breathe, all mega cheap movies. Like another one was Happy Death Day. That was made for 5p, made like 500 million. And it's just Groundhog Day. It's just Groundhog Day with like a horror element to it. So that's why it's appealing to like producers, because you can make the most money for the littlest risk. And I think if any type of film kind of elicits a response from you, it's a good thing. And horror is designed to do that. You go and see a rom-com, the most you can get is maybe a few tears here and there, but you're not going to get your heart racing, heart beating. That's what you want. You want an experience. That's why people do like escape rooms and kind of and things like that, because you're going for an experience. You're going to make your heart beat fast. You're not going to get that in a Meg Ryan film or I don't know.
Well, maybe if you look at Meg Ryan's face too long.
Yeah, that's true. That's a horror film in itself. That is.
Can I just say that that was Ghosty guy?
Sorry, that's
Brian,
the vodka
I still think of
talking.
you.
Right?
I've given them
Don't
a
sue
lot of
us,
vodka,
Meg.
guys.
Don't sue us.
But yeah, so it's kind of right now. If you're into horror and you have any horror ideas, it is prime. This is what I mean. If you're out there and you have a horror idea, an original horror idea for a film, it will get made. People will come to you and get made. People are so desperate. Producers are desperate, and directors are desperate for an original horror idea. I can't say the amount of times I've been in a situation where people have, okay, we need more horror ideas, and there's only so much I've got. I've got like 20 years of stupid horror ideas, and some of them are good, but some of them aren't. But if you're out there and you have an original horror idea, people will make it. You just need to kind of find these people. Yeah, and again, like I said, it's one of the cheapest ways to do it, because the good thing about horror is you don't need big names for horror. You barely have big names in horror films. You can get anyone off the street, as long as they're a semi-decent actor who can scream, then you've got a horror film. None of it, who's in it? Maybe the kid from Stranger Things. Besides that, there's no one really big.
Yeah, no one you know really.
Don't Breathe, almost unknown people, a few indie films here and there. And you don't have to pay them much. Get Out, it's a perfect one. Who's in Get Out? Like a guy who did an episode of
Well, he was in Black Mirror, wasn't he?
Black Mirror, yeah. And that's it. And who are the other people? Nobody knows. And that's why you don't have to pay him very much. And that's made almost $1 billion or something. It's crazy money. So that Blumhouse model is great. And Blumhouse is obviously one of the ones that have kind of spoken to us about doing horror films, and James Wan. There are a load of people out there who kind of embracing the horror genre and kind of bringing it to the masses. And I don't think there's ever been a time in history where horror's been so accepted as well. So I'm loving it. I'm living my best life right now. It's great.
No, absolutely. I mean, as said, it's it really is, a boon time for horror right now. It feels that way, especially over the last 18 months, as said, because of not just because of how it's touched the consciousness, but what's also struck me is the quality of the films you're getting. Even though they're made on a shoestring, you're still eliciting some really good performances, some really good script work, some really tight direction, and to a certain extent, some of these smaller horror pictures are putting certain bigger budget movies to shame in terms of the quality that they're able to put out, just as if you're looking at it as a piece of art. So it's amazing.
For instance, who's looking forward to the new Avatar film? Nobody.
Yeah.
But when you hear there's an It movie, that was the most watched trailer of all time.
Yeah.
And that was made for $10 million. That was made for nothing. It's absolutely crazy. But also you see horror seeping into the zeitgeist in terms of TV shows. Well, for instance, did you guys watch Legion, the TV show Legion?
Yeah, I mean, Richard is a massive Legion fan.
That's a horror show. That is pure. Standard. That is a horror show. Loads of horror tropes in there, and I watched that. I was like, this guy knows horror. Every episode is horror and it's horrific. Some of the stuff that happens in it is pure terrifying. It's it deals with nightmares and people's base fears: fear of the dark, fear of clowns, fear of just monsters, and and losing your kind of your sanity. It's pure horror, and I think that's probably the best TV show of 2017 as well, Legion. And I can't wait. And because of the success of Legion, people say, "Wow, okay, so you can do a comic book TV show and not have it just flipping people flying around and just being kind of silly." And I just love it. I can't wait for series 2.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, going off of that point that you just made as well about Legion, I mean, it was something we touched upon when we were doing our end of year review, and we were talking about comic book movies, and we were saying, probably the one way that they can survive is to try and embrace other genres. So instead of just kind of following the same standard path that they've followed, embrace things like the Western, like Logan did, or embrace, horror, which New Mutants. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the trailer for New Mutants.
I have, yeah.
But that's
horror.
basically, it screams horror movie.
It's going to do well.
That kind of shows you, I guess, the power and the influence of horror, and clearly, obviously, the big studios are paying attention to it because that's the kind of thing they're pursuing. So. Yeah, very interesting. Rich, sorry, did you want to jump in with a question? Because I'm just sitting here chatting the whole time.
First things first, I'm going to touch upon,
go ahead.
I'm going to touch upon what you guys were saying about, like the thing about horror films that is basically cheap to film.
Yeah.
And, you can just get anybody to star in them. I definitely agree with you on that. Although I will say that the mum in Get Out, I do know her from a few films because she's a goddamn MILF.
Oh, Catherine Keener.
Her and her daughter,
she's
I would
amazing.
gladly go to the sunken place. I don't give a fuck. Listen, I wake up middle of the night tapping teacups myself, man. I'm telling you, man. But you were talking about the mix-up of genres, like, for horror or for something like Legion.
Yeah.
And I think it's because, just going off of those ideas, it's because audiences now are smarter than they used to be.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'll always go back to like Blade. Like I always say that Blade is a film which doesn't get the respect it deserves, because even though it's based on a comic book, it's a horror themed comic book.
Yeah.
And so people, and I mean, back then people weren't able to make the difference between a horror film or a film that had horror tropes in it, and a comic book film, and a comic book, sorry.
Yeah.
So like I said, I think this is definitely like, the right time for horror to be embraced again. I mean, I haven't seen it this popular since the 80s. For me. Like, do you remember back in the day when they would just make like Jason films or like Friday the 13th films for fun? As standard.
Yeah. So have you seen Friday the 13th Part 13?
Yeah. It's like,
just
like,
out.
That culture. We need to make some money. Should we get both of these characters to fight against each other? Freddy versus Jason. You're like, what the fuck? Like, I might as well watch WrestleMania. Like,
Pretty much, yeah. Pretty much.
But so I mean, that kind of just led me into like the next question of like, the genre's become so strong now that you've got production houses basically saying, listen, we're going to make another film for you next year for next Halloween.
Yeah.
And people are waiting on it.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So if you yourself, because you said that, listen, I trust you, I've known you for years. You said that, if you want stuff to be done, you're the guys that they come to. Mm-hmm. If you could touch, and not in a bad way, if you could do any...
Not in a Harvey Weinstein way.
Not in a Harvey Weinstein way. Like, not in a cocaine and caviar way. Like, if you could, like, touch any horror film or horror character, who would you do? Michael Myers is my favorite. I think Halloween's one of the best horror films ever, alongside The Thing. But what would you choose?
Well, 100% I would try and reboot Nightmare on Elm Street again, and I've already got a really good idea how to reboot it. Okay. And I want to get to a situation which I don't think is too far off what I can. So basically, with Dawn of the Deaf, some of the people that are involved in that are involved with Nightmare on Elm Street, so I'm already in with the right people for me to kind of be like, and by the way, I've got this Nightmare on Elm Street idea. So that's what I want to do, and I've got the entire concept ready to go, and I kind of want to do it. And this might be giving the game away a little bit. I kind of want to do it as kind of a backdoor reveal. Like you think you're going to see one film, and all of a sudden, Freddy turns up, and you're just like, fuck. I want it to kind of be a surprise, like, hang on, what are we watching? And all of a sudden it's Nightmare on Elm Street. But the thing is with, like, when you reboot a movie, like, I hate origin stories. I actually hate them. Like, like, they're probably going to reboot Fantastic Four again, but now Disney and Fox are all linked up. Yeah. Don't do the origin thing. Yeah. Just have them already fully formed. No one cares how they have the powers. All they care about is this guy's strong, this guy can bend, this woman's invisible, this guy's on fire. Like, no one cares about how they
And I'm on
work.
LSD.
Yeah. It's like, who cares how they got their powers? They've got powers, and so that's been a big mistake, and that's why, in my opinion, all of the previous Fantastic Four films has failed, is because just the build-up is so boring. It's like, who cares? Just have them turn up to something, and they've already got their powers, and boom. We'll accept the fact that there was an origin story. Maybe we'll learn it in like film 3 or whatever. But yeah, so Nightmare on Elm Street, because Freddy is the greatest horror icon of all time. There isn't anyone bigger. And some of the films kind of got a bit like shady towards the end, just kind of got like he was just retreading the same thing. I think it peaked in Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3. I don't know if you remember that, Dream Warriors,
yeah.
where like kids in their dreams had powers and stuff. And yeah, I mean that was probably the best Nightmare on Elm Street. And it kind of went downhill from there.
New Nightmare wasn't too bad. I enjoyed
New Nightmare was amazing. Actually.
It was a fresh breath of air.
Yeah.
On a genre. Well, like you said, like Wes Craven created that character.
Yeah.
And then essentially like lost complete control over it.
Mm-hmm.
And when he took over it with that film, it just reminded you of the reason why he was good at what he did.
I mean, Wes Craven, not sure names, but so when Wes Craven died, he was following 60 people on Twitter, right?
Yeah.
I was one of them.
Oh,
I was one of them. I have no idea why. Like, I don't know how he found me, but I feel like me and him got a connection. And then one time I DM'd him just to see if he answered, and he answered, and he sent me some posters. I can't even remember what it was because I gave it to someone else. But I think he had some new film out. I think it was terrible. But yeah, he sent me like a bunch of like signed things because I was one of the few people that he follows, and he kind of liked my tweets. So yeah, so I mean, I'm a massive Wes Craven fan. I think he's to create something like Nightmare on Elm Street is just incredible. But yeah, that's that. I mean, there are some other like horror properties that I really kind of want to touch and reboot. There's a film called Night of the Comet from the 80s, from like 1984, I think.
Is that on Netflix?
It's on Netflix.
It is. I've seen it. I haven't watched it, but I've seen it pop up on my Netflix.
So basically, it's about like a comet passes over Earth. And this is like, to be quite honest, this is where I got some of the idea for Dawn of the Death. A comet passes over Earth and kills everybody, except for these two like valley girls in California who somehow fell asleep in some metal container, a bit like where we are right now at Post Pop. And so we're safe, guys, from any comets. So they wake up and you think, okay, it's gonna, and there's zombies around, and it's them versus zombies. No, they go to the mall and go shopping and steal cars and stuff, which is what you would do. And it's like, this is my movie. They get into and there's a scene where they're just dancing. The girls just want to have fun with the zombies all around, and they're just like grabbing dresses and stuff and trying it on. It's like, yeah, this is my movie. And also like one of them's really good at like arcade games as well. So like it was like written for me. And I've got the rights to do the soundtrack actually, because I have a record label as well called Postport Records. And I've got the rights to do the soundtrack, which I'm going to release quite soon.
Oh, nice.
But I want to reboot the movie as well. And like the director I always work with, Rob Savage, he's well into it as well. So at some point we'll attempt to kind of reboot that, I think. But yeah. Okay. So I think who would you want to see rebooted if you had the option of like picking a horror franchise that was going to be rebooted? What would you want to see?
Ooh, that's a good question. You know, it's funny. One of the things movies that I've always felt kind of could have maybe done with more mainstream recognition than it got was, funny enough, you were talking about Wes Craven, a movie that he directed some years ago called I think it was The Serpent and the Snake.
Wow, that's a pull.
Which was, do you know, it's funny. It kind of resonated with me because I've talked about in the past how, you know, when I was growing up as a kid, my mum used to tell me a lot of stories about sort of Caribbean myths and legends, and how, you know, that kind of tied into a lot of the culture that she was brought up with.
Yeah.
And one of the things that they kind of talk about is, you know, I mean, it goes under many different names, but most people would know it is voodoo, and sort of that, you know, that kind of culture and how it plays into the way kind of Caribbean people view the world, and that movie really kind of brought that to the forefront in a way that I hadn't seen before.
I need to watch that again.
And the fact that it's got Bill Pullman in it as well, it was just like, what? You know, it's like crazy that he would be in a movie like this, you know?
So it's really interesting because like one of the TV show kind of thing that we're working on at the moment is about all the different myths in different kind of places in the world. We actually don't have like a voodoo kind of like myth thing at the moment, but because my mum's from Philippines and she's told me some madcap stories, like honestly some of the stories, like, okay, I want to tell you a quick story about what she said. So and things like you guys like are aware of my sister, you know my sister, like she is like a very level-headed person. So her and my mum went to Philippines one time, went to a mall, and if you guys don't know Philippines, the Manila especially, it's very Americanized. So they went to like a big mall. And they went to try on some dresses or something. So they're waiting in line to go to use the changing room, right? And they watch this girl go into the changing room, close the door, and they're there waiting. And this girl's taking ages. And this is from the mouth of my mum, by the way. And 20 minutes pass, and they're like, oh, okay, this girl hasn't come out yet. This is unusual. So they speak to a girl who works there. It's like, this girl went in there 20 minutes ago. Is she all right? Maybe she's collapsed or something. So they look over the changing room, and the girl's gone, right? The girl's gone. So my mum and my sister say to this woman in the shop, it's like, what's happened to the girl? And they went, oh, it's probably the man that comes through the mirror and steals girls.
What?
Yeah, exactly. And like, and so my mum was telling me this. She's like, so this man came through the mirror and stole her. And I was like, what are you talking about?
like it's just an everyday thing as well. Just like, oh yeah, it's the guy who comes from the mirror and takes people, you know.
And then,
what are you going to do about it?
And like, I made the mistake of delving further. And like, the man is apparently half snake. So there's this whole like Filipino like, mythology that there's this like half snake guy that steals girls. I don't know, to eat or to have sex with. I have no idea. So of course, I say to my mum, "What are you talking about? Like, first of all, how is this man half snake?" And this man and my mum like didn't drop a beat. Was like, "Oh, maybe his mum's a snake." I was like, "Mum," and like my sister, who's like, my sister's normal. I was like, "You're gonna back this up?" And she was like, "Yeah, it did happen." How she said, like the girl went missing. Like the girl went. It was like, there must be some explanation why the girl went missing. Like she sneaked out somehow. You turned your back. Somehow it was still locked. But yeah, but that's kind of like, again, that's another influence for me. Like my mum's crazy stories about one time she saw a werewolf in a tree playing a flute. But that's that's another time. That is another time.
Hey, listen, you know, stories like that. You guys have seen Big Trouble in Little China, right?
Yeah.
You know the bit where they go down into the sewers, and that thing comes out the wall, and like I think the little old guy, I can't remember, his egg food. Throws like a little homemade bomb, and it goes, "You will come out no more." And Kurt Russell goes, "What will come out no more?" Like, just like, don't just say it flippantly. Like, you know,
exactly.
I want answers.
But this is the thing, like in some Asian cultures, like they believe in that, like it's like life or death. Like I was reading somewhere, like in China, if you break up with someone, you can go to someone who exorcise your ex because they think your ex is like possessed, and that's why they broke up with you. So you can pay someone to exorcise your ex without their knowledge to make them come back with you.
Wow.
It's mental.
Yeah.
Listen,
crazy,
I'm African. In my house, I can tell you two things.
Yeah, go on.
Not even long. Number one, I wasn't allowed to whistle after in the dark.
Yes.
Because apparently it would bring ghosts into the house. I was like, huh?
What?
And the other thing is that, you know, like when you're just sitting down and you might put both hands on your head.
Yeah.
I wasn't allowed to put my hands on my head because my mom said that means that somebody would die. I was like,
whoa.
Can I scratch my ass? Can I breathe?
That's a lot of power for a little kid.
Yeah.
Hang on. You can't. If you whistle, it brings ghosts into the house.
Brings ghosts into the house.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and you can't put hands on your head because that means somebody's gonna die. And I was like even now I'm trying to think of like what?
Maybe there was a situation where like someone put their hands on the head by accident and then someone died and they're like, oh, that was rich.
Like years ago. Bubble. It was him. He put his hands on his head. I was just scratching my nose, man.
It's funny. There's so much, like when you think about it, so much fertile ground from that part of the world, from Africa, from Asia, from from the Caribbean. I don't know what it is about those groups of people that makes them so superstitious and so kind of tied into
I feel like
these
it's like
kind
religion
of myths
or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
some
people have kind of speculated that it comes from different people's religious beliefs from various different parts of the world.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, become tied up in that. But I remember, we have a mutual friend, Richard's brother, who says that we can't enter the house after midnight via the front door. You have to turn around and enter the house backwards, and that's something that we still do, because apparently if you enter just any old how after midnight,
somebody can follow you.
Yeah, somebody can
For
follow
real?
you in.
Yeah. That's really interesting.
So
no, you want to know what's really interesting? Imagine being shit-faced at 4 o'clock.
Yes, exactly.
And having to remember that.
Yeah,
let alone that you can't walk forward normally.
and one more digression before we move on. I remember quite a long time ago, there was a period where I was staying with an older auntie.
Yeah.
And she was probably the most rational person you could ever meet, except that she was terrified of what she used to call like the ligaro, which is like a kind of like a vampire dog almost.
Jesus.
From the Caribbean. And
Amazing.
the only way you could stop the ligaro from coming into your house...
What's it called? The ligaro?
Ligaro, yeah.
Ligaro.
And the only way you could stop them coming in was if you were entering your home after dark, you had to throw either some sand or some salt on the front of your door.
Salt's protection, yeah.
And then what it would do is when it would get to your door, it had to stop and count every single grain of sand. And at the time it took for it to count the grain of sand, the sun would rise and would kill it.
That comes from Asia. That's from China.
Yeah,
How you stop vampires, you
Yeah.
throw rice on the floor and they have to count it.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Yeah,
in Asia...
that's like get rid of
it's-
Asian vampires. You have a pocket
in
full of
Asia
rice,
it's
you
the vampires,
throw it
yeah.
and you go, see you later, and they're like, damn.
See, listen, I'd be a son of a bitch. I'd throw a bag out
Yeah.
while it's counting. I'll go get some steaks.
Yeah.
I'll get that fucking video camera. I'll world star that shit.
I've been researching Chinese vampires like for this TV show. So like Chinese vampires, they've got so many things that can like mess them up. Yeah, like Western vampires, you can't mess them up. Well, you can't invite them in. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
with Chinese vampires, so yeah, you throw rice on the ground and they're stuck until they count every piece. You can just throw rice and just mess around with them until morning, until the sun comes out. But then also, if you hold your breath, they can't see you. Chinese vampires, seriously.
Hold on.
okay, I
Yeah,
didn't
no.
know that.
Because have you seen a Chinese vampire story with Sammo Hung?
Yeah.
I swear he does that as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
That's
if you hold his
right.
breath,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
then-
no,
and
that's
the vampire
right.
can't
That's right.
attack
I
him.
remember that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Those
Yeah, I remember that.
Mr. Vampire.
Yeah,
films.
Mr.
Yes,
Vampire.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
Oh, yeah,
Mr.
They're
look,
amazing. Those films. Yeah. I watched.
They are.
If you watch Mr. Vampire 5, it's more like a martial arts movie, but it's amazing some of the stuff that happens in it. Those Mr. Vampire movies are brilliant. By the way. So I'm trying to take all of these kind of like weird myths from across the world and kind of put them into a TV show where every episode kind of is about something that people don't really know about that particular monster or culture, and somehow tie them all together. So yeah, and then like the second series, we're going to like go further afield maybe, because I want to do some stuff in like Africa. I want to do some stuff in just so I can go abroad and just get a company to pay for me.
Yeah, why not? Why not make a holiday out of it?
Yeah,
mate?
yeah.
Well, it sounds
Gotta
very
go
much,
for research, innit?
Yeah,
it sounds very much like almost like what's his name's done with American Gods, like like Neil Gaiman,
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
where he hasn't put any form of like belief above any of the others, and just said like, well, listen, it's a level playing field.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
What did you think of American Gods, by the way?
I loved it.
Yeah,
I love it as well.
It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, I really do.
I thought the last episode was a little bit kind of shaky.
It was a
but-
little
Yeah.
bit.
It felt
It was
rushed.
a little bit anticlimactic.
It felt
for
rushed
me,
to
yeah,
me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a little bit anticlimactic.
was
I was
amazing.
expecting a bit more, but yeah, as a whole, I mean, I'm a sucker for artsy fartsy stuff. I'm an absolute sucker for it, and American Gods managed to marry kind of the artsy fartsy with the myth and mythology, and the two working in tandem was just enough
Yeah.
for me. But it's funny, we were talking about it on the Review of the Year podcast.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I was saying that the guy who was the showrunner on that was also the showrunner on Hannibal. I don't know if you ever saw it.
I watched Hannibal. Yeah, it's brilliant.
And Hannibal, yeah, again, I loved it. It broke my heart when I found out it was cancelled. It really did, because I never believed anybody could truly kind of reinvent that mythology in a way that would work with audiences. But the way they went about doing it and reconstructing that character and really kind of, he leaned on the gothic horror side of it as well, and the psychological horror side of it, and and some of the visuals in that show were just stunning. And for me, it was just like, this is exactly how I would want Hannibal to see. I don't really want Hannibal to be a slasher movie. Not that there's anything wrong with slasher movies, but I don't want him to just kind of be a sort of slasher type thing. I want there to be more than that, and they really went for it with it. So
I thought it was a little bit like I can't remember what was first, but was True Detective before Hannibal or after? Because there was a lot of similarities.
I think Hannibal was first,
Right,
yeah,
okay.
I think Hannibal was first, and then the first season of True Detective came, I think, a few months after.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was the same year, though, wasn't it?
It could have been the same year, but I'm
Yeah,
sure Hannibal
yeah.
came out first.
Yeah, I'm
I mean,
pretty sure it was the same year.
That was another thing that I think with True Detective, I think it was some horror elements in that people didn't expect as well. In the first season, Anyway, I mean, the second season was a little bit.
Well, the second season's shit.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
Yeah. Well, actually, like, coincidentally, with the second season, like, I think I was one of the few people. I think after like episode 1, everyone like just panned it, like saying that Vince Vaughn was like just the worst. And I was like, actually, do you know what? Like, I know everyone hates it, but it's quite interesting. It's all right. And then HBO DM'd me on Twitter and was like, "Do you actually like the show?" And I was like, "Yeah, it was all right. It was all right." And they were like, "Okay, cool. I'm going to send you a signed poster."
Oh,
and
nice.
it's like, cool. Like,
Okay.
so wait for it to come. It was Vince Vaughn. It was a signed poster of all the people in it. It's right. It's behind you, actually. It's in there. A signed,
No way.
a signed Vince Vaughn poster. You guys can have it. I don't want it. You can literally.
You know what? I need to learn how to use Twitter as well. I need to learn.
Oh, mate. Anything, especially with HBO, if you like something, especially if people are panning it, and like they'll DM you, or you can DM them saying like, "Hook me up," and they'll sort you out.
Okay, now back to the original question because I didn't get.
Yes.
If you could touch any character, yeah, because you guys are just forgetting me. What's going on?
Yeah.
We
So,
keep locking you off.
So
Sorry,
what, I
mate.
feel,
what character would you reboot if you could?
Well, you know what? It wouldn't even be a character. It would be
Film.
a film. I think one film, which is like critically acclaimed, but not a lot of people have seen it. And then another film which has been remade, which was a pile of shit. And then another film which has got a bit of a cult following.
Okay.
So the first one would be Prince of Darkness by John Carpenter.
Wow, that's a real good shout, actually.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, that's a great film, by the way.
I would love to see how.
Scary. It's a scary
Listen,
film.
very scary.
I had nightmares, and I saw that when I was a teenager. Like, you know, like big teenager person. I was like, yeah, let me leave the lights on.
1920. And just like,
Yeah, there wasn't even teen at the end of the number. And I would like to see how that type of film could be approached now, especially in a type of like era that we live in.
Yeah.
And he touches upon things, and I think John Carpenter is a really understood director because he touches upon things years in advance, and some of those films have been panned. I mean, like for example, Big Trouble in Little China. I mean, did really, really bad in the box office.
Yeah.
But as essential, I mean, like he got influences from like Hong Kong films, which went on to influence films like The Matrix and so forth. You know,
if that was released now, it would make 500 million.
Yeah, easy. But he uses the whole thing of like, remember, if I remember correctly, the actual message that's being sent that the devil's come to take over the earth. He uses radio frequencies to listen. We don't even use that anymore. We use digital.
Yeah.
In a time and age where where everybody just plugged into social media, I'd like to see how a film like that would be approached.
Yeah.
And just to see if it would, and how religion would be approached in that film, because the film has a very, very like Catholic or Christian, Christian undertones. There's no space for other religion in it.
Yeah.
Whereas like the time we're in now, you've got Muslims, you've got Jewish people, you've got Buddhists, you've got everything. So I'd like to see that remade. Like I said, I'm not the type of person to really capitalize on one character, although I will say that's not entirely true, because I'd like to see somebody like Michael Myers
Okay. Yeah.
touched. The reason being is because I think that's one of the greatest horror films ever made, because
Halloween. Yeah, the first Halloween.
the first
100%.
Halloween.
Yeah.
Even the second one's not too bad.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And then from that point onwards, when they start to bring in supernatural elements, I'm just like, nah, like you've just destroyed an unknown person who was just a force of nature.
Yeah.
And that's what I liked about the first Halloween.
Yeah.
He is just this guy.
Do you know they're bringing it back?
See, but that's the reason why I brought it up, because I know they're bringing that back, and they're bringing back Friday the 13th. And they released that. Well, the new Friday the 13th was meant to come out, I think, this last year.
Okay.
And it got put behind.
Yeah.
Because I know that Danny McBride is writing it.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he's writing the new Halloween.
No, sorry,
Yeah.
the new
He's
Halloween.
on
Yeah,
Halloween,
the new
yeah.
Halloween.
Yeah.
And that's what I was saying, was like, people, like, production houses can now say, yeah, this film's coming out in a year.
Yeah.
And people wait for it. So
Yeah.
there's obviously like a fan base behind this genre.
Yeah.
But Halloween, like I said, I think scrap all that supernatural elements that they try to bring into
Yeah.
the character and just get down to the person that is Michael Myers, because
Yeah.
as bad as it sounds, one of the main things about horror is that people like to see fucked up shit.
Yeah.
You see a car crash on the road, and you're gonna want to see what happens. I mean, there's nothing to be ashamed of. That's just human nature. And so somebody like Michael Myers, there's people like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's people
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that. So I mean, so that's one film I'd like to see touched, and the other one I'd like to see touched upon is kind of links into what we were saying about Legion and the New Mutants, because I remember reading those comics as a kid, and just understanding body horror. And for a little while, well, remember in SFX, I used to be a big David Cronenberg fan.
Yeah.
And so I would choose The Thing.
Nice, yeah. I mean, the 80s thing with John Carpenter, that was a remake in itself of the 50s thing. But I think it's due like a remake of that actual film.
A good remake, not a shitty prequel.
Yeah, I was
like
going to say
not a good remake.
Yeah.
You know,
because the problem is that remake that they it wasn't even really a remake. It was supposed to be a prequel. Wasn't it?
Yeah.
That one that they released a couple of years ago was not great.
Well, I feel like I don't know if you guys have you seen the film The Void?
The Void.
No,
Yeah,
I've
it
heard
came
of
out,
it.
right?
It came out maybe a couple of years ago in the cinema, and then kind of was on Blu-ray maybe last year. I feel like that's a spiritual successor to like things like it's like practical effects.
Yeah.
The guys who made it, they love like John Carpenter, so it's loads of like big monsters, creepy monsters, practical effects. I feel like that was almost a remake of The Thing. And it didn't get as much love as it really should have. But yeah, if you have a chance, watch The Void. I think you'd appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, like I said, I mean, like those three choices that I chose is just because I think is where the information that we're now privy to has just expanded exponentially. Yeah. Wow, you know, I just threw some big words in that fucking sentence. It's a vodka, Jed. It's a vodka.
Dictionary.com, hold on.
But you know, it's things that we'd all be able to, you know, associate with. Like you've got. You mean you can go into who's that person on YouTube? The pimple popper?
Oh yeah, that
like the shit that comes out some of those pimples. I mean, like, and then you've got things like tapeworms and stuff like that. So I think a film like The Thing, it wouldn't even have to be necessarily horror. Body horror is just nature. Nature, that shit that you don't see in a normal day-to-day basis. Yeah. And there's nothing scarier than true life. Yeah. The same reason why I think Halloween works is because Michael Myers could be the guy borrowing sugar from you next door. Yeah. And he's just feeling a bit bored and he wants to put on a mask, you know?
Well, and then practical horror using like practical effects, like basically, so you have it in camera instead of like using CGI. It's like a lost art. It's gonna die out. So there's not very many people that do it. Like the guys who made The Void do it. I just worked with someone. I did a little film for Fox for Halloween, which long story. But it's kind of like a devil type film with salt circles and things, and we used the guy on that to do the practical special effects, who his kind of job is to make monsters basically, and he made us like a freaky practical real monster, and we got this like really like skinny guy who he's kind of freaky looking, like to be fair, he was a nice guy, but he's really freaky looking, and we put all this monster stuff on him, and like I was there on set and I was like, this guy's come from hell to get me. This guy's gonna get me. Like these other people can't see him, he's gonna get me after this. And yeah, I really think it's a lost art, and I think it's I think that's what we need. We need like practical effects again, and then like we're going to come to it eventually. But when we talk about The Last Jedi, I want to talk about that a little bit. Yeah. When they use the practical effects of Yoda, a lot of people hate that. A lot of people that are like stupid. It looks like the Muppet Show. No, but I love that. Yeah. He's really there, and Mark Hamill is interacting with a real. Not live thing, but a real thing that's actually there. He isn't just like doing it to like a tennis ball or something. And I like that shit. I love that shit. And I miss that thing from films. Like, you watch something like... I hate like shitting on things like Avatar, but I will, because like, who wants another Avatar? Like, it's just all CGI. It might as well just be like an animation. There's no point. I didn't really engage with the original story. I thought it was a great film, but like it's boring now. Like I would never watch it again. Have no interest in watching the sequels. I want to see practical things in real life that people have kind of like done with their own hands. I kind of like that kind of stuff.
I think probably the only film I've seen recently where the monster was that effed up and it was CGI, and I was genuinely impressed because, like I said, like The Thing. Like holds number one for like just scary, making me shit my pants. But it was from the Neil Blomkamp, the director. He's got that YouTube channel called Oat Studio.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of those stuff yet. Yeah.
Listen, I'm gonna send you a link after, please do, and in fact we'll put the link in on the YouTube channel.
Yeah, remind me, and we'll put it up in the.
I think it's for I think the mini film is called Zygotes.
I've heard about it and people have told me to watch it, but I haven't watched it yet.
Like it is, like I said, it's completely CGI'd, but it is worth your time. So I mean. If done well, and I think what you're trying to touch upon, which maybe you listeners might not have gathered, is that CGI has made people lazy. So they just think they can just get like a monster and put it on screen, and it's like, no, it's not about that. You need to believe what you're seeing. So in fact, for the next time when we interview you, hopefully you would watch Zygote by then,
Yeah.
and you can tell me what you think, because
Yeah.
I watched it and I was just like, it's making me itch and shit myself and lose my breath at the same time, but I need to finish this film.
Well,
So
the thing is with CGI effects for monsters, especially for horror, they all look the same. Like I know, like Weta,
oh yeah.
They-
Peter Jackson.
Peter Jackson's
Yeah.
studio,
Yeah.
they do a lot of the monsters and film all the big films, and they've made every monster look exactly the same. Like the monster from Cloverfield looks like half the monsters from
Godzilla's.
Godzilla
Yeah.
and Pacific Rim and Colossal, and they just all look exactly. It's just like the same monster. It's just like, it's because it's just one from one company, and I just like. I mean, I know like the old Godzilla films where there's a man in a suit. It's kind of cheesy, but I kind of like the fact that they're really there and they're kind of interacting with what's around there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just as an aside, I know this is going all over the place, but have you seen Shin Godzilla?
I haven't
No,
yet.
I haven't, no.
I haven't
Any good?
yet, but it is on my list.
so
to-
good.
to
Is it
do,
good, yeah?
Yeah, and
Okay,
like,
okay.
It's on my
like,
list.
and this is like an admission now. I don't like 95% of the Godzilla films. I think they're boring.
Yeah.
I'm not into Godzilla, but Shin Godzilla, like that monster is amazing. Like just when you think he can't get any more like messed up, suddenly he can shoot lasers out of his mouth and out of his tail, and he can like knock down planes with his laser vision. It's messed up. It's so good, and he evolves throughout the film as well to get more powers.
Okay.
Oh, it's so
yeah,
good.
I've heard. I mean, I've heard nothing but good things from people who've actually seen that.
Yeah.
And
I
I
think-
remember when manga were advertising the UK release, and
Yeah.
they were really kind of hyping it, and I was
Was
like,
that at MCM? Did they advertise it there?
I
at one
wouldn't
of
be
the Comic-Cons?
surprised. Yeah.
They might.
I'm
have done.
sure I saw
They might
posters
have
for it.
done,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, they might
Yeah.
have done.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw it more on social media, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's entirely possible that they did. But
Yeah.
yeah, definitely, Shin Godzilla is one to check out, listeners, if you haven't seen it, and let us know what you think of it as well if you've seen it already, because
Please do.
yeah, definitely be
Yeah.
down to hear that, man.
Well, I've got one because I know we're kind of running over time, but this is a really good horror movie, and it's actually quite some years old now. It's from Korea, and for some reason the name escapes me. But Jason, we've both seen it.
Is it The Host?
Listen,
The
that
Host.
film,
yeah.
Yeah.
That
that monster. I don't know. For me, I love
Yeah.
that monster, and I
Yeah.
believe that the people that made that film believed in that monster because you see that monster about half an hour into the film.
Yeah.
Like they don't give a fuck. They're like, yeah, we believe that this thing is here, and it's a mixture of practical and CGI as well.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
And that monster was quite original,
Yeah.
and how it moved and like it, it almost felt like when they wrote the story, they were like, okay, we need to give a true background to how
Yeah.
this monster feeds, how it lives, how it
Yeah.
hunts, and everything.
Yeah.
And yeah, so so all listeners out there, if you can peep that film as well, go see The Host. It's a Korean film.
By the makers of Okja. who
Yeah,
was on-
Okja,
Yes.
which wasn't a bad film
Yeah, it was
either,
pretty
or a
good,
bad
yeah.
Netflix movie. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that was pretty good. Yeah, pretty good.
What do you guys think of? Have you seen Colossal, the Anne Hathaway monster movie?
No,
on my list.
I haven't.
It's
It
on my
is
list.
on the
Okay.
list to see, but I've heard it's a good movie.
Yeah.
People have said it's a good movie, but the monster elements of it, like some people have complained about, the monster designs and the way that it's
Yeah.
kind of handled. I mean, I gather that they're trying to do something different with the genre in a sense
Yeah.
that they're using. And this is all stuff that I've kind of picked up online, but they're using the monsters as kind of a personification of these people's problems and,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
the way
yeah, yeah.
that they're
Yeah.
dealing with it and stuff, which I guess is interesting in a sense that it's something different.
I just like seeing Anne Hathaway just basically being a monster.
Yeah,
Like, we're used to her in like Les Mis and just
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Princess Diaries, and all of a sudden she's like a monster, smashing down buildings and stuff and, like, in Korea.
Yeah.
But have you guys seen the film Big Man Japan? It's like a Japanese movie.
No, never heard of that.
It's about this guy. He's a bit of a loser. He's like a loner in Tokyo, and every now and again, like when there's some like big like chaos happening in Japan, he electrifies himself, and when he electrifies him, he becomes a big, massive like monster that kind of like fights the other monsters. But
Okay.
because like he smashes all buildings up and like
Yeah.
he messes up the town, people hate him because people know he's the monster, and they're like,
Right,
he
yeah.
goes into like a bar, and then like no one will serve him because,
Yeah.
because they know he's the monster that smashed up the town.
Okay.
And I think that kind of is tied into a little bit into Colossal. I think it's quite similar themes. So if you want to watch Colossal, then watch Big Man Japan if you have the chance as well.
Yeah, definitely. Well, listeners, check those out as well. Some stellar recommendations there from Jed. So
Yeah.
have have a listen, man. But Jed, before we wrap up,
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you one question, really.
Okay.
What made you fall in love with Netflix?
So like as you guys know, like before, in order for us like watch things, we used to be in a situation where we'd be in a situation where we'd be with a group of our friends and we'd be like, guys, have you seen this film? And you'd be like, no, I haven't seen that film. Because it would be, you'd have to like go to a video shop, you'd have to go to Blockbusters and maybe they wouldn't have it, or you'd have to wait like 3 years till it came on TV. But then when Netflix came along, and originally as like just a service where you can get DVDs through the post, it just became easy to watch it. Everything was at your fingertips, and I just thought, and obviously you asked this question because I have a podcast called What to Watch on Netflix, which isn't just about Netflix, it's just about every streaming service. So I thought, why should people kind of have to have an issue with picking stuff? Because there's too much to watch, basically, and no one knows kind of what to watch. You might watch something and waste 2 hours of your life, might not be good. Why not have something out there where people can kind of curate it for you? So my podcast is people who I think have a bit of knowledge about film, about what's kind of like in the zeitgeist and what's kind of cool at the moment, and recommend it to people out there, to my audience, of what to watch. It doesn't have to be on Netflix. It can be on any kind of streaming service, Amazon, Hulu, Shudder, whatever. And yeah, I just think it's an amazing world we live in, where now we don't have to say, do you remember that film with that guy in it? You can watch it like that minute. And there's part of me that kind of like hates the fact that we lose that kind of, the kind of like the search. We don't have the search anymore, where you go into some random like video shop in Streatham because you heard that they've got like some like film that you want to watch, and you have to ask for the list, and then they take out a list from under the counter and it's got that film on. Now you can do, everything's available, and like, you lose the kind of like the journey. It's like when you're going after a girl, and like the fun bit is like trying to get her, and once you're with her, it's not as fun anymore. Like, if my girlfriend's
you realise
into this,
she farts just like everybody else.
If my girlfriend's into this, then that's not the case for you. This is because you're special. But but like with Netflix, it's there at your fingertips. You can watch it. Like yesterday, I was like, what should we watch? I want to watch that film, My Life as a Courgette. No, it's called My Life as a Courgette.
Yes, okay, the cartoon, right?
Yeah, the cartoon.
The kid in the orphanage.
Yeah.
It's on my list as well. Yeah.
So I watched that yesterday, and I was like, is that even out yet? And I just Googled it. Yeah, it's on Amazon. I've got Amazon Prime. So I watched that instantly. And we live in a world where you don't actually need to go to the cinema anymore, because it comes out pretty quick on streaming services. And Netflix is the future. And I have got a little bit of a kind of connection to it, because it's likely that they're going to like have some of my stuff on there relatively soon. So it's quite the revelation, really. It's kind of the part of our life which we take for granted now.
Yes.
We take for granted that we have instant access to every film, every kind of pop culture thing that we've ever wanted. Whereas before we'd have like trade videos. Like Richard, you were saying before, you still got my video. I lent Richard a video. What was it again?
Listen, you let me this video in 1999, and I'm going to tell you, the listeners, the reason why I know it's 1999, because it was a pirate copy of The Phantom Menace.
I remember buying that. Yeah.
And at the end of it, it had Evil Dead 3: The Army of Darkness, and basically, I mean, to be fair, I didn't watch The Phantom Menace until I saw it in the cinema. And I saw it in the cinema about 5 or 6 times, because I know someone that used to work in there. But then I watched it on the tape. But like you said, like, it's not easy accessible. Like,
don't try to change subject. I want that video back.
Exactly.
It's either gone or there's porn in it.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. I still want it back.
But like you said, I remember, I think even after I left you guys in college and I went to my next college, and then the Evil Dead 1, which I hadn't seen because it was banned and it wasn't available, and asking my teacher to borrow it, my film studies teacher to borrow it, and he wouldn't lend it to me because he was like, no, I don't get tapes back. Now you ask someone to borrow something and they'd be like, no, and you'd be like, well, fuck you. Push over a table, and then you just go home and, like you said, go into Netflix or Amazon or Showbox. Not that I say I'm condoning like online streaming, but whatever works.
If you can't find it and you can't afford it, I say go. Anyone out there who wants to watch my films, just stream it for free. I don't care. I literally don't care. Like the other day, I went onto I googled Dawn of the Dead, and it's not like on every streaming service for free. Like, and I was just like, what is this? What is this? And I was like, it's fine.
Well, that's how you know you've made it, man.
Yeah,
When
yeah.
streaming
Yeah.
services start picking you up, and you've made it.
So yeah. So with that tape, and it's just that thing of it's just that thing where everything is just so accessible. I mean, the thing, even though it's taken for granted, we don't take it for granted because we remember.
Yeah.
And I know that makes us sound old, and the skeleton just fell down.
Because
That's a bit ominous, isn't it?
This is recorded in Post Pop HQ. I have like skeletons and Ouija boards. I've surrounded these guys with Ouija boards and skeletons.
Yeah, we're sweating right
Yeah,
now.
no, see the thing is, I tell you what makes me laugh. Like Jed's saying he's surrounded us with Ouija and he's laughing, and you got me and Jason here, from African and Caribbean descent, and we're just like, fuck you. We don't play these games.
This is a get out situation.
Yeah.
We don't last long in scenarios like this. There's never a Jermaine at the end of the film. That's what I'm gonna say. But before we wrap as well, before the last couple of questions, Jed, I want everyone to know, because I know this story, and I'm not even sure if Jason knows this story.
What's going on now?
But I want everyone to know this story about your name, Jed Shepherd, and who else has your name, Jed Shepherd, on TV.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so when I was in secondary school, and it kind of continued when we were in SFX. This isn't a cool story, but this is a story. So when I was in school, like my dad's best friend when I was growing up, was Jimmy Nail, the actor. And he had a show out. He had a couple of shows out on the BBC, successful shows like Spender. And then he made a show called Crocodile Shoes, which had a #1 album. He got to #1 with a bunch of songs, and then the show was about.
I know you know the song. I know you know the title because I remember.
So the show was about like a guy who was like a welder, which is kind of like Jimmy Nail's story. He turned to music and was like a success basically. But like instead of using his own name, he like looked around and was like, "Oh, I want to use my best friend's son's name." So the guy was called Jed Shepherd. So he named it. So all through like secondary school, like teachers were like, "Yeah, hook me up with a Jimmy Nail album," and I was like even saying it now is like weird. So I kind of like grew up with like Jimmy Nail and like Ray Winston and those guys. Like I'd go to like in fact like when I went to watch Batman Returns, it was with like, Jamie Winston, like Ray Winston's daughter.
Yeah.
And like now she's like some like socialite or whatever. But I remember when she was a little kid, me and her watching like Batman Returns. But cool. Yeah. So like, I guess I got a little bit of a taste of like the kind of like
the celebrity life.
Yeah, it's very, very small.
The fame, the drugs, the glory.
With like some like people that are not very cool right now, but still, I guess Ray Winston still has a lot of work.
Yeah, well, the Jimmy Nail still has his fan base, man.
Yeah,
so.
I'll put him in something. I'll put him in something for sure. We paid a favour.
Yeah, definitely. You got to pay it forward, man.
Yeah.
But I mean, unfortunately, we've run out of time. But
have we really? Because I wanted to talk about Last Jedi.
Oh, yes, of course you did, didn't you? You know what? Sod it. Yeah, let's tack on 5 minutes. Okay. I did actually want to ask you anyway your best and worst film of the year. So, you can probably kind of segue Last Jedi into that if you want.
Well, like, I genuinely think Last Jedi was one of my best films of the year. I absolutely loved it. And I listened to your episode about The Last Jedi, and there was obviously like mixed views. But I think the episode was very balanced, and I think it was fair about all the stuff you said. But personally, and it's always personal, like I loved it, and I think it's my favorite Star Wars. I genuinely think it was my favorite Star Wars. I think it was the most fun I've had watching Star Wars, because like if you think about the fun Star Wars, like so The Force Awakens was pretty fun. What other fun ones? Maybe you've got Return of the Jedi is quite a fun one. I would say The Empire Strikes Back isn't a fun one, and I would say even A New Hope isn't fun. It's good. It's a good film, but for fun-wise, Return of the Jedi, which it obviously isn't the best film, Force Awakens is fun. This, to me, is the epitome of a fun adventure Star Wars. So many things happen. It starts off with a massive battle, the best battle I've ever seen in Star Wars. And I think even if you are a detractor of the film, you don't like the film, that battle at the start was amazing. Absolutely amazing. Special effects, the kind of drama that they've instilled. Within the first 5 minutes, I'm like, whoa, this is so much happening. And I mean, obviously, people go to the fight with Rey and Kylo Ren. I mean, that's probably the best fight scene I've seen, or Jedi fight scene at least, in a Star Wars movie too. And I think if you have those elements in a Star Wars movie, two of the best kind of scenes in a Star Wars movie, the whole film as a whole is improved by that. I can understand some of the kind of the problems with that people say, for one, like why didn't Luke just go to Crait? Why and why is he dead? I don't understand. Like, it seems a bit of a cop out. But like, and then obviously, like, say he uses all of his Jedi energy to kind of go across there. Why didn't he just go there then? Like, how long would that have taken? But I think like it adds more to. It makes the next film kind of better, because now what's going to happen? They've got to kill off Leia somehow.
Yes.
Sadly, so it's going to make it even more interesting. But I thought there's so much happened in The Last Jedi, and just I just love it. It's my favorite.
I mean, it's really like, it's really interesting the response to The Last Jedi in terms of how diverse it's been.
Yeah.
And there's parts of the response, the sort of audience response, that I've really enjoyed. Even people who have loved it, as you know, they've loved it because of specific things that they've identified with on a personal level with the movie. And you know, to that regard, I can't disagree with anyone. I'll just like, well, cool. You know, if you love it, that's a good thing. So, you know, enjoy it and enjoy the experience with it. And that kind of stuff has been really interesting to see. What I haven't enjoyed so much is, that if people have had a criticism of the movie, it's kind of got caught up almost as, you know, I mean, Alvin mentioned it in the podcast, but it's kind of got caught up in a culture war where there's kind of people who, there's, on the one hand, there's a set of people who seem to have just a massive issue with the Star Wars franchise now, as in the way it's presented and the type of people who are involved in it. And then on the other hand, there's a set of people who are just like, if it's, you know, if it's not by George Lucas, then I'm not interested. And it kind of means that for those people, you know, like Richard, who may have some criticisms about this particular film, unfortunately, even though some of those criticisms certainly can be valid from his point of view and can be valid from other people's point of view, it gets lost in the kind of ether of, you know, fuck Star Wars and SJW Star Wars and blah 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 blah, and you know, we've kind of hit a point where even Star Wars has fallen victim to this kind of you know, divisive thing that seems to be going on in movies at the moment, where it's, you've got to pick a side, and
it's annoying. It's annoying. It's people fighting.
It's
but I mean, also the thing is, like, what other film creates this kind of reaction out of people? Part of me was like,
so true.
This is Star Wars, and people are like, just like blowing up the internet because of they about film. It's like, wow, this is annoying, but it's also, this is a film, this is fiction, and people are going crazy about it, which is kind of good in a way, because it just
for sure.
It makes the mythology like bigger, and like, this is our mythology, this is like our Greek mythology. In 100 years time, people aren't going to remember Get Out or like flipping It. People remember Star Wars. People remember this film. They'll be like, oh yeah, the legend of Luke Skywalker and stuff, and like he sacrificed himself for Rey. That'll be like Jesus. That'll be just that'll just be like how Jesus sacrificed himself for our sins, which I still don't get, to be honest. I know we went to Catholic school, I don't understand how that works. But like, Luke Skywalker sacrificed himself to save the rebellion, to save the good guys. And to me, like, I don't know, even if you hate it, if you're in the cinema and you didn't like hold back your tears or like try and like pretend like you're just rubbing something in your eye, you're dead inside. You're dead inside. Like, throughout the entire film, I was just like, oh no, I'm gonna cry. I'm gonna cry in front of my friend here. This is bad. This is bad. I've never cried in front of this friend before, so I can't start now over Star Wars. But like, I had to really like bite my lip and like, oh man, I hope Princess Leia makes it through this, because I'm gonna be a mess if she doesn't. So I mean, the only criticism I would have about it is I thought Finn should have died. I thought it would be.
I saw a few people say that, actually. Yeah,
he should have sacrificed himself.
His arc sort of went in The Last Jedi.
In order for him to kind of reach the epitome of his kind of like hero status and to inspire the rest of the people, he should have died, taken out that gun, and then people would be like, Finn's a legend, and people would join the rebellion because of him. And but because he survived, it's just like, what's lost here? I mean, I guess Luke Skywalker's there to kind of inspire people, but like, there are kids out. I know it showed you in the film like kids were kind of inspired by Luke Skywalker, but more kids would be inspired if Finn died, because Finn, he turned from the Empire. Yeah. That's more inspiring. That story, starting with the bad guys, coming over to the good guys, that is a more interesting story to me. And to me, like, to be honest, Rey's story isn't interesting to me. Finn, to me, is the main person in the story because his story is the most interesting. His arc is the best out of everybody on there. He went from the dark side, unless Kylo Ren gets good. At the moment, Finn is the main guy for me. His storyline is amazing, in fact. And if he manages to take down the Empire himself, Jesus, that's going to be like epic.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons why. I mean, even though he's not my favorite character, but I did like to.
Who is your favorite character?
Luke Skywalker.
Okay.
I'm vain. I want to be.
Yeah.
I think this story's about me, man. but I would say that's probably one of the reasons why Han Solo was such a popular character.
Yeah.
Is because he's the most fully rounded human character out of the whole original trilogy.
Yeah.
He is that guy where it's like, well, I'm not going to go down there. That's dangerous. Why would I do? You understand what I'm trying to say? Like you said, it's like he has that human element that you can latch onto, and like you said, with the whole thing with Finn. Like, Luke Skywalker's a legend whether he lives or dies.
Yeah.
So that's it. He's of Skywalker blood. So even let's say if like the Jedi archives were to ever get released or whatever, like you're going to see that he's come from something special anyway.
Yeah.
But like you said, Finn is just a guy. And he's a stormtrooper. And if anything, he's probably like quite a low stormtrooper because he's not.
He was a guy just cleaning up
pretty much.
Which is even more inspiring.
Well, the thing is, I mean, like it even ties into the whole thing where people try to bring in race to the whole thing of like, well, stormtroopers are just white. Well,
no.
First things first.
You know what? 75% of them could be black. We don't know.
Well, the thing is,
because we've never seen their faces, so we have
they
no
come to
idea.
the dark side for a reason. Who knows? I have no idea.
Like, if you think about it, the original stock that the stormtroopers were made from. He's not a white man. He's a fucking Maori. Well, in our universe, he's a Maori. Tamura Morrison.
Yeah.
So that vodka's actually slightly good to me. He's a Maori guy. So when people are saying like stormtroopers are white, like no, stormtroopers are not white.
Yeah.
And any stormtroopers that you are thinking of, you've never seen them and you've only made them up in your head.
Yeah.
And that just means you're fucking racist. Finn has that. He has that whole arc. He has that whole arc around him.
Yeah.
That people can essentially latch onto and progress and grow with him.
Yeah.
And like I said in the interview, in the last podcast, it's the reason why I'm not really a fan of Rey. Not because Rey is a female, or I don't care whether she's a female or a male, but I just don't think she has a strong hero arc.
No, she's not interested.
That makes me want to continue the story. But
yeah.
I've said all this before now, and I've had a bit to drink. So.
I do like the fact that she's not a Skywalker or a Solo or a Kenobi.
Yeah.
She is. It makes her story a little bit more interesting. But one thing I wanted to talk to you about is like, it was kind of discussed that Lando Calrissian was meant to be in this one. Did you guys hear why he wasn't?
Was that a rumor?
Yeah.
Real rumor, yeah?
Real rumor. And,
okay, no.
And it was totally planned. It was like written in. But so like he was going to be the guy that ran the Canto Bight casino, and of course that makes perfect sense.
Perfect. Yeah.
And they even like had planned like posters saying like calling it like Lando's like casino or something.
Yeah.
But like so apparently he's not in like good shape at the moment.
Yeah, but that's been for a few years because I remember last time I saw him, he was using a walking stick to walk. He's
So that's why he wasn't. If he was up to it, like physically, then they would have. But he wasn't up to it. So when people say, "Oh, he should have had Lando," they tried, they wanted to, but unfortunately, he wasn't up for it. But it would have been. I would have been cool. I know it's like fan service to put these old characters in, but like I quite like it.
Yeah.
I like it when R2-D2 shows up. It's like, oh man, like it's just.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. At the end of the day, I mean, I've never used like fan service as a criticism of
Yeah,
anything
yeah.
because I'm a fan. So
Yeah.
service me.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
Like, give me
this
what
is
I
why
want.
I'm here.
Yeah, yeah.
Give me what I want.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly, yeah.
You want to stroke my ego a bit? Yeah, do it.
Yeah.
I don't care. I'm not going to complain. You know, so
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. It's good stuff, man. Good
But
stuff.
yeah, I mean, I when I listened to your episode, I could see some of the kind of like problems you had. But you kind of said it in a way. I've seen it in some places where they kind of say it in a way where if you don't agree with my point, then you're wrong. But like how you guys have put it across, and this is why I like your podcast. Why I don't listen to a lot of podcasts, but your podcast I listen to all the time. And maybe it's because like I know you from school, so like I'm like, what are these guys up to now? What, are they going to like mention SFX or something? But like, yeah, no, it's interesting that you kind of give a balanced view and like almost from a different angle than you kind of usually hear. Because I listen to a lot of Kevin Smith podcasts. And he's coming from like an angle where he's like bitter about the industry. He was like not letting him do any Star Wars. Yeah. So,
Oh man.
but
Crazy,
yeah.
crazy.
But one thing I wanted to ask is, as it's kind of the start of the new year, I'm looking for new comics to read. And this might be extending your podcast a little bit, but I am interested. What comics should I be reading right now? I read a few here and there. I read Squirrel Girl, but I mean everyone kind of does. What do I read? Yeah, I kind of read some kind of odd stuff. But is there anything particular I should be listening to right now?
I mean, I was going
reading
to
right
say,
now?
I mean, Richard is probably the perfect person to ask because I haven't actually followed comics much at all over the past year, apart from sort of some of the older stuff that's come out, some back issues and things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, Richard is the guy with the finger on the pulse of comics.
Yeah.
So
Because I've read pretty much like everything you can think of, any like kind of like if you look at the top 100 graphic novels of all time, I've read everything. I've read all the like the big runs of all the famous names ever. But like now, I don't know what I should be reading.
I mean, what am I reading right now? And well, I'll tell you, if you're going to read anything more, it's weird because I don't want to sound like that person who's hating. But no, but you've got Marvel seem to be in a place right now where they just seem to be trying to force certain issues into storylines and comic books and characters.
Okay.
Which I think is good on their behalf because they're trying to do the good thing, but it has to stay within the context of the story that you're trying to tell.
Yeah.
If not, it just feels fake.
Yeah.
And if it feels fake, I don't believe you. And if I don't believe you, I don't fucking want to read your shit.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say that about all of their stories. So for example, and it's weird. Okay, I'm going to break it down like this. Like I've had a bit to drink, but sorry if I slur my words. Like, don't make a particular character gay because people have been calling for it.
Yeah.
I want that person to be gay because they're gay.
Yeah.
And I don't want the gayness to be thrust into the forefront because that's just a figment of that person's character.
Yeah, because you want to kind of be seen as to kind of be like a 21st century person.
Well, exactly. I mean, like, listen, I've got an eclectic bunch of friends. Like my gay friends, when I introduce them to like my other friends who might be straight, doesn't matter whether they're straight.
Yeah.
They don't. The first thing they don't say is that, "Hi, my name's Andrew and I'm gay."
Yeah.
They don't. It's just like they just happen to be gay and that's it.
Yeah.
Like, and so Marvel right now seem to be trying to fan service everybody, and I think it's kind of like it's kind of like playing havoc on their writing right now.
Yeah.
So I would suggest maybe a lot of the galactic and cosmic stuff, which seems to be mirroring what used to come out in like the 60s and 70s with like Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
So pick up Guardians of the Galaxy.
Stuff.
Silver Surfer stuff, Adam Warlock stuff, like really like LSD, trippy, religious context things, but without trying to force it down your throat, just telling you a story, and whatever you take from it, you take from it.
Yeah.
Guardians of the Galaxy by Jerry Duggan is really good. The Ultimates 2 is really, really good.
Okay, I need to read that. Yeah, Ultimates 1 was brilliant.
I mean, that's the only thing I've been picking up from Marvel properly.
Okay.
I've been picking up a few comics from Image. So, Deadly Class.
Yeah.
So I'd say pick that up before the TV show comes out this year.
Okay.
Deadly Class, Saga.
I love Saga. Yeah, actually, that's one I always read. Yeah.
Paper Girls.
Paper Girls is my jam, and of course,
the
it's my
thing
jam.
is, we've had stories about Paper Girls and bloody SFX. Like,
Yeah.
hey, imagine if we had bikes and stuff. Like, like Paper Girls. Low. Have you read Low?
No, I haven't. No.
Pick up Low. The Wicked and the Divine. I haven't read yet.
I've
but,
read.
that's on my list.
It's amazing.
As well.
Amazing.
So you got that.
Yeah.
DC wise, to be honest, DC have had a shit couple of years, but what they've done is that they've listened to the readers and they've paid attention to the mistakes that they've made, which is quite funny because this is something which the complete opposite to the movies that they're bringing out.
Yeah, it's just a disaster.
They've rectified a lot of the problems that they've made in the past few years with like New 52.
Yeah.
And they're just coming out with some amazing writing.
Nice. Okay.
Green Lantern,
Yeah.
Batman.
I heard Batman's amazing at the moment.
Batman right now can do no wrong.
Okay.
You've got Batman, even Superman, Super Sons.
Yeah.
They've got a new comic book which I'm really waiting for called The Terrifics.
Supergirl's apparently really good at the moment.
Supergirl I haven't read.
Okay.
The Titans is pretty good. The Flash is good.
Yeah.
But it just seems like they've really focused on their main characters that helped
Yeah.
to build the DC brand and said, okay, we're going to run with this.
Yeah.
As opposed to Marvel, who are still seeing everything as just one big franchise and they're trying to cram everybody into anything. For Marvel, pick up Thor, the latest run. Well, not the latest. The past
female
couple,
Thor.
The female Thor.
Yeah.
But pick up Jason Aaron's first run of Thor, which leads into this.
Okay.
And it's probably some of the best writing I've ever read.
Oh, okay.
Like, it deconstructs the Thor that we know and allows you to believe that Jane Foster can now be Thor, and it works perfectly.
Okay.
Like I said, it doesn't matter whether it's a female Thor or if it's a male Thor. It's about the story and it's about the character, and Jason Aaron nails it on the head. So yeah, if anything, pick that up first.
Okay. And one last thing I know is time's run out. I wanted to say something because like you guys obviously review all the DC and Marvel films. I want to talk about the kind of the Emperor's New Clothes type situation with Wonder Woman. So, I mean, this might be controversial, but like, so obviously it's the first female superhero. It made a ton of money. Everyone's hyping it up. If you say one single bad word about it, you're the worst person in the universe. Film was boring. The film was boring. To me, like, I went into it thinking, oh, okay, I've heard so much good about this film. Maybe that was kind of the thing that turned me against it. I watched it looking for all these great things, and I was like, this is a standard DC superhero movie. It's as good as the other DC films. Maybe it's a slight better. It was a better director, so maybe it's a slightly better storyline. But to me, there was nothing in it that kind of separated it from the other DC movies. Marvel just shit all over DC, and I don't like the fact that we're in a situation where if you say something bad about a film that's female fronted, you get shit on. Like, the film is boring. The film is boring. Like, I wanted to like it. I went into it thinking, oh, this is going to be amazing. Number one, the actress that plays, what's her name again? The actress that plays Wonder Woman?
Gal Gadot.
Gal Gadot.
Yeah.
Obviously, she's stunning. Her screen presence is second to none. She's a terrible actress. She is a terrible. She couldn't act her way out of a paper bag. She's terrible. When you put her up against like even Ben Affleck in Justice League movie, and that's saying something. He acts her off the screen. She isn't a good actress, and like, I mean, she's obviously working with what she's got, and in a superhero movie, you're not going to get the best kind of soliloquies or whatever. But yeah, what do you guys think about the DC movies and why?
Yeah.
What can they do to kind of improve and kind of catch up with Marvel a bit?
I mean, this is something we've talked about a lot, and I mean, listeners will know we've talked about this to death almost. Me and Rich and Alvin have been over this. They seem to have a lot of problems right now, based on kind of the things that you're hearing about sort of Warner Brothers and the DC division and how they're handling it.
Yeah.
There seems to be a lot of problems. There seems to be a lot of internal politics. There seems to be a lot of there's factions almost within the executives who are handling that brand.
Yeah.
And it seems to be directly affecting what's happening on screen and the actual things that you're seeing on screen. And that is kind of how they've managed to end up in the mess that they've had. Whereas at Marvel Studios, it's more or less one voice that you know has the ultimate say, which is Kevin Feige.
Yeah.
And you know, and he obviously has his executives, he has his other producers, and they will all, you know, they all have an opinion on the movies and the way that they want to go.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's his one voice that will say, okay, like, let's do this. You guys, decide how you want to do it, but let's do this.
Yeah.
And then let's do that. And you get the impression that there's, everybody's swimming in the same direction. Everybody's rowing in the boat in the same direction.
Yeah.
Whereas with Warner Brothers DC, it seems like, as said, there's a lot of internal politics there, and this person's pulling that way, that person's going that way, that person's going that way. And, it seems to be directly affecting what comes out at the other end. Yeah. And it's crazy. I mean, I don't know if you heard this story after Justice League came out, but one of the kind of complaints that people that didn't like the film had, and something that Richard brought up was the concept of time within that movie, and the fact that it felt like you couldn't really get a sense of where the movie was placed, where it was beginning, where it was ending, and so on. And part of
Marvel, you can.
Yeah, and part of the problem with that was because obviously they had to change director, and there was significant rewrites and so on and so on.
Yeah.
Anyway, apparently it came out afterwards that there was talk from some people at WB saying, you know what, we're not really going to make this 2017 release date. This movie's just not ready. We need more time. Yeah. Let's push it back until 2018. And, the rumor that came out was that the higher ups said no. And the reason why they said no was because if the movie came out on a specific date, I can't remember when it was now, but if it made its release date in 2017, then the higher ups would get a bonus payment from the planned merger that was going to happen between AT&T and Warner Brothers. So because Justice League was kind of like seen as the prize asset that Warner Brothers were pushing to AT&T to say, come sign with us, we've got the Justice League, this is going to make us X amount of money, they couldn't be seen to be backing away from that project, so they had to keep going forward with it, or certainly in the minds of those executives they had to. So it's and again, we don't know how true this is. This is all based on stuff that I've read online, but I mean it seems like there's just a lot of things going on there. And going back to your thoughts on Wonder Woman, I mean I enjoyed Wonder Woman overall.
Yeah.
I didn't hate the movie. I don't know if that's maybe because in comparison to what the other DCU movies are like, I was being maybe a little bit generous than I would be, but I did enjoy it. And I certainly, I'm certainly not ignorant to the cultural significance of Wonder Woman, far from it.
Yeah.
I'm more than happy for any woman who feels impacted by that movie to celebrate the fact that they feel impacted by that movie.
Yeah.
But we also have to bear in mind, and again, this goes back to people's views on Star Wars: The Last Jedi and so on, that there should be a space where everybody can say what they feel about the movie. And as long as it's not, as long as you're not turning around and going, I hate Wonder Woman because it was directed by Patty Jenkins and women don't know what they're doing when they're directing. Or I hate Wonder Woman because it's a woman in the lead and women shouldn't be leading movies. And unless somebody's coming out with that as a criticism, if they are, then by all means, you can confront somebody about those kind of opinions. But if somebody is just kind of assessing the movie as a whole in terms of what they've seen and don't like it,
I'm saying
fair dues.
The movie's boring. Wonder Woman comics are boring. Her entire storyline is boring. I don't care about her whole backstory about being on that island with all these Amazons. It's boring. It's not a good story. It doesn't make any sense. It's boring. And I wasn't like leaping off my seat to kind of go watch the movie. I watched it because everyone else said it was good. But I think people are lying to themselves. That movie it actually isn't good. And I think once time has gone, once like 10 years have passed, 15 years have passed, people will go back and go, oh, actually, the only reason that we said this movie was good because it was important. The movie is important. It was the first proper female superhero movie because you can't count Catwoman or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And she did a very, very good job. It sold tickets. It did what it had to do. But if you go back to it, that is not a good movie. That is a boring movie, in fact. There's that one scene where they're fighting, blah, 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 that's good. everything around it is boring. Too long, wasn't interested. The whole end sequence, absolutely boring. I am looking forward to Batgirl, though, because the most recent Batgirl comics from Marvel have been...
DC.
Sorry, DC.
Yeah, be careful, man.
Yeah, sorry. Well, it's because
The
he's jumping...
fanboys will hang you for that. So.
Yeah.
Know
Sorry.
what he's talking about, man.
It's because Joss Whedon's jumping from both.
Yeah.
So he went over to do Batgirl, and I love the DC Batgirl. I'm saying it so much so you know I know it's DC. the recent Batgirl comic is probably in my top 5 favorite comics of the last couple of years, because it pits
That's
her.
the Babs Tarr.
Yes,
one, right?
exactly.
Yeah, cool.
It puts her in the 21st century. You can relate to this person because she talks like you talk. I'm not saying I'm a teenage girl, but sometimes I have the mind of a teenage girl. It's just a real good, fun comic to kind of read. And there's no one better. I know people have, especially Joss Whedon. He doesn't make it easy for himself, but because there has been problems with him, like cheating on his wife and stuff, with possibly the actresses on Buffy. But apparently it's Cordelia, right?
He done well, man.
It was Cordelia.
Apparently,
it was
well.
Cordelia.
Yeah, I mean,
He done well.
yeah,
Yeah.
sources
Smashed
say.
I remember hearing about
Sources
this
say.
like in the early 2000s. A friend of mine who had a friend who used to do like the Buffy cons here, and he told me that story. And it's only like years later when I was like, "Hey, I heard that story before."
Yeah.
Cordy, all right.
Yeah, but like, if you think about it, like she was like 17 or something, like on set, so a little bit sus. But there isn't anyone better to do a Batgirl movie than Joss Whedon, because obviously I think Buffy is one of the greatest genre TV shows ever made, and if anyone knows how to do a teenage female superhero, it's him. So yeah. So we've sidetracked about 15 million times in this, but I think
That's all right,
we've
man.
touched a lot of...
I think our listeners are used to it by now, to be honest. Quite frankly, they know what we're about, so
Yeah.
it's cool. But Jed, thank you, man. Thank you so much.
No worries.
Before you go,
Yeah.
could you let everybody know where they can see your work and
Yeah.
how they can find you and
So
shout at you on Twitter
yeah,
and stuff
so you
for
can-
hating Wonder Woman?
You can follow me, by all means, please do, and justify why it's a good film, because it's not. Follow me on Twitter at Jed Shepherd, JedSheperd. Instagram the same. Go Post Pop Records if you want to find out what I'm doing in terms of music. Postpoppodcast.com to find out my podcast. One's called What to Watch on Netflix, which these guys are on in about 5 minutes. We're going to do on my podcast, talking about film recommendations. None of us are prepared, so it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, it should be weird.
And there's a bunch of other podcasts I do, but mainly follow me on Twitter for stuff. One more thing, like I'm going to find out today if I'm going to be writing the new comic for the Toxic Avenger, which is a Troma kind of basically the House of Troma. Toxic Avenger what made Troma, and Troma kind of was the place where James Gunn first kind of had his way. He wrote stuff for them, directed stuff for them. Obviously, Matt Parker. No, what's the name?
Matt Parker.
Oh, Trey Parker
Trey-
and
Trey
Matt
Trey
Stone.
Parker.
Parker Stone.
Yeah, for the South Park guys, they started a Troma as well. So I love Troma, and I love Troma films, and I love Toxic Avenger. So it's a real privilege if I do get to write the kind of reboot of their comic, which I think I have, but I'll find out for definite in a couple of hours' time. And yeah, so just follow me on Twitter at Jed Shepherd. I've listened to your podcast for ages, guys, so I'm really glad I'm finally on it. And he would have known, like, back in school, that we would be sitting here in 2018 talking about comics and films and stuff.
Yeah. The geeks have inherited the earth, people.
Yeah.
The geeks have inherited the earth.
They have.
But no, thanks a lot, man, for
No worries,
making
Sam.
the time for us. And as I said, we really appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's been great to kind of see how you've kind of, as I said, risen within the creative arts, and how you've kind of made your way along. And all the best to you, man, for the future. And
Cheers, man.
we'll be there. Just don't forget us if you get a celebrity premiere next year or anything.
I'll try my best.
We'll be
We're
there.
going to be on in a few months anyway, man. What are we talking about?
Yeah. And shout out to the Mank Geek who isn't here.
Yeah,
I
big
feel
A.
like I've taken his place by being the negative one of the group.
Yeah, well, he won't take kindly to that. He'll probably challenge you to a fight now.
He'll be like,
something like that.
that's my secret. I'm always angry.
I feel like if he was here, he'd be like, "Oh yeah, Wonder Woman was fucking shit."
Yeah.
Fucking hated it as well.
Yep, that's our man geek, mate. That's our man geek. Well, thanks a lot, Jed, and listeners, thanks a lot for listening. Make sure that you subscribe to us. At the end of the podcast, there will be a little trailer at the end that will tell you how to subscribe and where to find us. So make sure you check those out as well. All right, we're out of here. Thanks a lot for listening, and take care, people. Peace. If you like what you just heard, why don't you follow us online? You can find us on Twitter at woolongtalks.com, on Facebook at woolongtalks, and on Instagram at woolongtalks. We also have our blog, which we update kinda regularly, and you can find us there at www.woolongtalks.com. If you have any ideas for topics or would like us to feature your geek-based products or business on our show, you can always get in touch with us via email at woolongtalkspodcast@gmail.com.